What's poppin' and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're gonna be talking about this book, Inspired, How to Create Tech Products Customers Love. Written by Marty Cagan. Like the book suggests, it's a book about how to create tech products, kind of like in a project manager role. However, as you know, I'm building apps in my spare time by myself, so I'm going to cover the learnings that are applicable for me and other people who are building apps and other stuff by themselves and not necessarily are in a large team. But if you are a product manager, this book is also very valuable and I can really recommend that you read it. But in this video, we're only really going to cover the learnings from a small business perspective. So without further ado, here are the 10 most valuable things that I learned from this book. Number 1, solve real problem. First of all, you really need to start off by understanding the problem which you're trying to solve. Secondly, the problem which you're trying to solve needs to be large enough so people are willing to switch if you come up with a good solution, and there need to be enough people who have this problem for your product to be able to fit in the market. Moreover, if these are not real, tangible problems which people really face, then it doesn't matter how good of a solution which you develop, because there's kind of like an obstacle where people don't really want to switch from their current setup or however they're solving this problem now to your solution if their problem isn't large enough. However, if your problem is large enough and you really understand this problem thoroughly, then you're able to create a great product which a lot of people will love, and you'll see subsequent business success. For instance, the author uses an example of Camille Hurst, who was a product manager at Apple and was leading the project of moving iTunes from a DRM product to a non-DRM product. And essentially that was a large enough problem for people where they were confused by the rights of music. It was difficult to get a hold of music legally, so then they developed that whole iTunes model that you remember, where you had to purchase an album or purchase a song. This was a big enough problem for enough people, so it actually turned into a $20 billion business for Apple at the end. And I'm not saying that these are the types of problems which you need to solve at this scale, but the problem that you're trying to solve needs to be understood thoroughly by you, and it needs to be for a large enough addressable market for it to make sense financially. And to really exemplify this, just think about all of the massive startups which you read about to receive funding and then who end up going broke after they've even developed their product just because no one really bought it. It was just all hype in the beginning. Number 2, customer empathy. You've heard the saying before, the customer is always right. And this is not so much about the customer always being right, but more about you getting the perspective of the customer. You see, when we're building a product, we aren't just building that product for ourselves, we're building that product for a target market for them to solve their problem. You need to leave all of your preconceived notions at the door and really work on a problem from the customer's perspective. To do this, before you even develop the product, or once you're kind of in the idea phase, you really need to do your best to validate the product to make sure that you understand what the customers are feeling, what they're thinking, and how they feel about the problem which they have, in order for you to be able to solve that together with your product team or on your own if you're working in a small startup. One of the examples that Marty Cagan uses is Starbucks testing. This can be both with prototypes but also user interviews, where you sit down with the customer at a Starbucks for 20 minutes, you ask them about their problem, you kind of show them some kind of basic prototype and really try to understand as much as possible what the problem is that they're facing and how they're solving it currently. If you're not working alone, it's also a good idea to bring an engineer with you to these interviews, because they will be able to translate this into the actual product and they'll be able to work more efficiently when they actually understand what the customer perspective is. Number 3, and leading on from the last point, is prototype and test. The idea here is that you need to develop a prototype relatively quickly in order to prevent yourself from sinking a lot of time and money into something which is not an issue or something which you're not able to solve efficiently with the product that you're intending to evolve. For example, this is something that I did wrong quite early with my first app, Wonder Sagas, where I just built the whole thing and then I took the prototype and kind of like as a live version. But the author encourages you to prototype early and quickly, like maybe just wireframes in the beginning or a simple UI that's barely usable, just so you can show that to stakeholders if you have those, or potential customers who really understand those. 1, this solved their problem. 2, is this a problem? And 3, do you understand the problem? This can also be done in those kinds of settings. There are various techniques for how to test products and how to prototype. For example, you can do simple prototyping, you can do wireframes, you can do UI, or you can do like a feasibility build where you just test out if it's possible to build this with the current technology. There are a bunch of different examples. I'm not going to go through all of them. My most interesting ones though were Starbucks prototyping or Starbucks interviews with a basic wireframe prototype, as well as kind of these high-level prototypes that are built in a UI program that look like they're real, but they're not really real under the hood. Number 4, iterate and improve. Similar to the last 2 points, one of the things that's very important is to continuously iterate and improve on the product which you've built. This means that you shouldn't just build a product once and never work on it again, but it also means that if you can release an MVP and then iterate it on it continuously, then do so. It's better to release it, get a few perceptions, get a few opinions, and then continuously you work on it and iterate that product afterward, as opposed to waiting for it to be perfect. Better is better than perfect. One of the very important things for this is automated testing. Automated testing is where you write a piece of code that will test the basic usability of the code which you've written for this particular product. So for example, it can be making sure that all of the payment steps work. It can be making sure that there are no dead links, etc. within the app or within the website. Just a piece of code that's written to automated testing in order for you to speed up the rate at which you're able to iterate and improve and release new versions of the app. One of the things which was very interesting was that Marty Cagan pointed out that great product teams are actually able to release things daily and good product teams release things every other week, meaning that the release schedule for these high functioning product teams is very high. And I guess this applies more for corporate level businesses, but also if you're a small startup, don't be afraid to iterate quickly and release quickly, because that will help you get to insights much faster. Number 5 is leverage technology. And what's meant with this is making sure that you leverage new technology. Often when new technology comes out, it will be a great opportunity to build something new with it because it's relatively new and you're able to solve a problem much more efficiently. One example in 2023 is AI. So many AI companies have been popping up since January when ChatGPT launched their API, like Snapchat AI just released yesterday. So a lot of companies are using this technology to build on their own product, and this was technology that wasn't available before. If you're building products, make sure you stay in the loop on what's actually possible and what's actually available in the space that you're operating in order to be able to leverage this so you improve your products in the future. On the other hand though, don't just use technology because you're able to use technology. For example, again with the whole AI thing, a lot of companies like your local bread baking companies all of a sudden implemented AI into their dough baking app, and you don't really need it at all. But it just happens to be a trend right now, so people want to implement it for the sake of implementing it. Watch out for doing this, because if you do, it's quite a high likelihood that you're just developing technical debt over time because you're not implementing the things properly or in a useful way, so they will just be in the way essentially when you want to iterate on your product in the future. And also you're not really solving any real issues and therefore creating no value for the end consumer, meaning that you're not really doing anything good at the end of the day. Number 6, achieving product market fit. This is also something which is related to your first point with understanding your market, but this is also something which can take a little bit of time. Achieving product market fit. It's paramount to your product in the long term. Product market fit is when you have a product that satisfies strong consumer demand in an efficient way that makes sense financially for you and the customer. It's the golden ratio where the product you've built aligns perfectly with the target market. And there are a few things or a few pointers to achieve product market fit. For example, Marty Cagan points out that you should only really focus on one segment at a time. Don't try to address all of it at the same time. This can be, for example, a particular segment like teenagers, or even geographically. Maybe start with Korea and then you do Japan later, for example. In order to achieve this, it's paramount to do all of the user testing, which we pointed out before, but also do significant user research for the individual segments which you're targeting. And remember that a great product without a market is like a key without a lock. It looks great, but it won't open any doors. Number 7 is team collaboration. Team collaboration is essential, as we know, in all different aspects. There are 2 interesting things which I think I pointed out in the book. First of all, it's to co-locate teams where possible. So if you can, if you're working with 1, 2, 3, 8 people, if you're in a large corporation, try to sit all of these people in the product teams with each other, because there will be so much more collaboration happening at the same time, where you can just poke someone's shoulder and they'll be able to help you with whatever you're working on. And also it's just good for overall team morale. 2 is also to let people focus on what they're good at. If you're a product manager, then stick to product managing. Don't tell engineers how to do what they're trying to do, then you're gonna limit them, but also you're not an expert in what they're doing. So stick to what you know. And I've tried to implement this myself in my own startup, so to speak. For example, UI design, etc. I've offloaded all of that to people on Fiverr, and it can be as simple as that. Just outsourcing the things which you're not great at, but also the pieces which are not significant enough for you to kind of lose control of whatever it is that you're building. Number 8 is make data-driven decisions. This is stuff that we hear all over the place lately, and it can be as simple as using Google Analytics before you make a particular decision, to doing advanced A/B testing of different types of features and journeys within an application, for example. In order to do this, it's essential that you keep track of metrics to begin with. So for example, you set a number of KPIs, key performance indicators, for your particular product that you keep track of, so you can understand how people use it, but also so you can understand what's actually usable, what's not useful, and then use this for other things such as marketing. So take an example. Netflix collects a lot of data on what people watch and consume in different countries and different markets. They use all of this data which they collect for how people interact with their product and what they watch, for how long they watch them, what the retention is like, what the pause rate is like, in order to then inform decisions when they're developing new shows. So if they think that this show did really well in this market because of this, this and that, and we can tell that by those metrics, we want to try doing something similar but localized to this market, for example. Data is always used to make informed decisions about further iterations of the product. Number 9, design for the user experience. So design is not just about how a product looks, but it's also about how it feels, how the user interacts with it, how they go through with it, for example. So it's both UI and UX. So aim to create an intuitive and enjoyable product that people will find easy to understand. Take Airbnb, for example. It's super simple to scroll through and understand what each feature does. It's relatively minimalistic, even though you can find millions of homes and different types of services on there. So good design should make the product easy to use and solve the user's problem. And the only really way to find this out is to actually get the product in the hands of potential users, get their feedback. And when we say get their feedback, it's not necessarily asking them exactly, tell me what you think about this product, because consumers often don't really know what they want themselves, but it's rather observing them and watching them, seeing if it's easier for them to figure out what the service does or what the product does. And then in this stage, you should actually try to be as quiet as possible, which is also something which the author points out in this book. You should really be guiding or telling the user what to do. You should just be watching and then kind of asking questions which the user will have to answer by themselves. Number 10 is to stay inspired, which is a good ending to a video about the book with this title, I think. And this is more about having a product vision, kind of like a strategy for how you want the product to develop, how you see the product fitting into the market in the future, but also avoiding things which will prevent future innovation. This is where you need to overcome things as technical depth. You need to allow your team to work on things which they find enjoyable. Things such as hack days can be useful for this, where people are able to take a whole day and just work on whatever they want. But it's also about you as a strong product manager if you're in a team, but also you as an individual if you're just working by yourself, to continuously check yourself in regards to what you view the product to be, and also making sure that you continuously understand the marketplace which you operate in order for you to have a relevant product over a long period of time, and in that way stay inspired to keep iterating on. Remember, every great product started with a spark of inspiration, so don't lose yours. That is it for today's video, ladies and gentlemen. I found this book quite inspiring, and I found it quite good, and I will definitely be implementing a few of these learnings on my own. If you want to read this book, I'll be leaving the link down below. It is an Amazon affiliate link, so if you do choose to read this book, then please use the link down below, as it does support my channel so I can keep making these videos. If you like these types of videos and want to see more of these kind of book reviews, then let me know down in the comments. If you have any other tips for building products, then also leave those down below in the comments. And if you like this video, then leave a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.